And then there was an advertisement in a magazine to have a free audition at NBC, the Artist Bureau. May Regan ran it, Sunset and Vine, the good old NBC
That's
studios.
right.
My mom took me there. They recorded my voice. A couple of weeks later, I was called in to audition for Arch Oboler. Arch Oboler...
He's the one who discovered you.
He discovered me in the halcyon days of radio. Norman Corwin, Orson Welles, and Arch Oboler. They were the big three. They were the Steven Spielbergs
at NBC.
At NBC.
Written and directed by Arch Oboler. Oxidol invites you. Every Man's Theater. You'll hear it every Friday at this time and over this station. Yes, each Friday night at this time you'll hear a play, sometimes romance, sometimes tragedy, sometimes comedy, especially written for radio by Arch Oboler.
So they called me back to audition for a part in his weekly show, Every Man's Theater, on NBC. Gordon Jenkins doing the music, the greatest stock company of radio actors. And I got the role only because I had the youngest sounding voice. And he had to have a little German accent. And I've always, for some reason, I don't know where I ever heard German, but I played a little German boy, you know. My mother had to pay the page boy $5 to tell him what a cue was. I don't know what a cue was. They put me on this box. I'm this big on a box to stand up with a gooseneck mic. And so I started. That was my first show with Arch on radio.
On radio.
And then he called me back to do a couple of shows. And on one of the shows, Alla Nazimova, the great Russian actress, was starred in it. Now, the show finishes. We all come out, and Arch says, God bless it. He's speaking to Alla. He says, I got to go to Chicago. I got to do this show. I got to go there to do the show. It's about this young kid and stuff. He says, I like the show, but I don't want to travel. Nazimova says, what do you need to go to Chicago? Little Tommy Cook. Get him to do it. So he decides to do it. And that was the first show I started, called Problem Papa. My parents, Mercedes McCambridge and Howard Duff, were my parents in that show. Gordie Jenkins doing the music, Elliott Lewis, Hans Conried, you know, the greatest.
How long did that show last?
Well, Every Man's Theater, that was a whole series that lasted for a couple of years. And then he did plays for Americans during the war effort, the Second World War effort. And I starred in one of those shows, Paul Reversky. And it was a kid, his father told him, America's in deep trouble. And everybody has to do their part. And you've got to get in, you've got to help. So little Paul, he goes and he tries to enlist in the Marine Corps. Go away, laddie boy. He tries to enlist in the Air Force, in the Army. Nobody will have him. He ends up in the park, and this conscientious objector, Hans Conried, has just gotten a letter. He's drafted. And he's PO'd. Why? War effort. I've never done anything. I've never hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't belong here. I don't do this. And finally the kid realizes that this is a letter to get into the Army. He said, yeah, give me the letter. That's what I want. Nobody has taken me in. I want to go in the Army. My dad says we've got to do something. And he looks at me and he says, kid, just go home. Just go home. And at the end the kid says, I tried to get in. I tried to get in the Army. Nobody will have me. Gee whiz. It fades out.